For 8 years, I thought I had a perfect marriage with Sarah. We built a life together, supported each other through hard times, and celebrated the good ones. But one evening, while serving drinks at a party in our home, I overheard something that shattered my world. My wife, talking to her lawyer friends, called me her practice husband. She laughed about waiting for the real man of her dreams while I paid the bills. The pain cut deeper than any knife ever could. Before I tell you how I transformed from a doormat into a man who finally stood up for himself, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you will want to see how I turned my whole life around. I met Sarah during our sophomore year at University of Washington. She was studying pre-law, her eyes always set on the prestigious law schools that would one day open doors to corner offices and partner positions. I was majoring in computer science, already building websites on the side to make extra cash. We connected over late-night study sessions in the library, where she would quiz me on coding concepts, and I would help her memorize legal precedents. Our relationship moved quickly. By senior year, we were living together in a small apartment off campus. Sarah was accepted into an elite law school in Boston, and without hesitation, I applied for remote IT positions that would allow me to move with her. Looking back, I realize I never questioned sacrificing my own opportunities for hers. It seemed natural to support the woman I loved. Those 3 years of law school were brutal. I worked 60-hour weeks maintaining databases for a healthcare company, while Sarah buried herself in casebooks and legal briefs. Every spare dollar I earned went toward our living expenses, allowing Sarah to focus entirely on her studies without taking on extra debt. When she landed on the law review, I took her to the nicest restaurant we could afford to celebrate. When she struggled through finals, I brought her coffee and made sure she ate something besides granola bars. After graduation, Sarah secured a position at Walker & Reed, one of the top corporate law firms in the country. We moved back to Seattle, and with our combined income, purchased a modest 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood. I remembered how we popped champagne on our empty living room floor that first night, dreaming about the family we would start and the life we would build. That memory stings now. The first signs of change came subtly. Sarah began working longer hours, which I understood given her junior associate position. But even when she was home, she seemed distant, constantly checking emails or taking calls from colleagues. When I suggested a weekend getaway to reconnect, she said she could not afford to be away from her phone in case a partner needed something. About a year into her new job, Sarah started socializing regularly with her coworkers. Happy hours that were supposed to end at 7 stretched until midnight. Firm events that were once described as boring obligations became cannot-miss opportunities. I was occasionally invited to these gatherings, but always felt like an outsider. The conversations revolved around legal jargon, firm politics, and inside jokes I could never be part of. That is when the comparisons began. Sarah would casually mention how her colleague Anthony took his wife to Paris for their anniversary, or how James from litigation had just bought his girlfriend a brand new Audi as a birthday gift. While she never explicitly said I was failing her, the message was clear. My stability and support were no longer enough. She wanted the lifestyle her lawyer and doctor friends could provide. I tried to step up. I took on freelance projects in addition to my full-time IT job. I saved for months to buy her a designer handbag she had been eyeing. I even interviewed for higher-paying positions, though they would have required more travel and time away from home. Nothing seemed to impress her. The handbag was used once, then relegated to the back of her closet. My job interviews were met with lukewarm encouragement. The day I was promoted to IT security manager with a 20% pay increase, I rushed home with a bottle of her favorite wine, eager to celebrate. Sarah came home 3 hours late, barely acknowledged my news, and spent the evening texting with colleagues about a case. I drank the wine alone while she sat across from me, physically present but mentally elsewhere. Summer turned to fall, and Sarah began attending more social events with her work friends. Dinner parties, weekend brunches, wine tastings. My invitations to these gatherings became increasingly rare. When I asked why Sarah claimed they were spontaneous get-togethers or insisted I would be bored, I started feeling like a stranger in my own marriage. Watching my wife laugh and share stories on social media with people I barely knew. Our home, once a sanctuary we built together, began to feel like a hotel where Sarah occasionally stopped to change clothes and sleep. I found myself eating dinner alone most nights, watching shows we used to enjoy together and going to bed hours before she would return home. The distance between us grew measured not just in time apart, but in the coldness that had replaced our once warm connection. The event that changed everything happened on a crisp October evening. Sarah decided to host a dinner party for 6 of her colleagues from the firm. She asked me to help prepare the house and food, which I agreed to, despite knowing I would be the odd one out. I spent the entire day cleaning grocery shopping and cooking a 3-course meal that I hoped would impress her friends. When guests arrived, Sarah introduced me briefly before diving into conversations about firm politics and client matters. I busied myself serving drinks and bringing out appetizers, trying to find moments to join the discussion. Each time I sat down, the topic would shift to something legal that excluded me, or someone would ask me for a refill. After an hour, I resigned myself to playing the role of server in my own home. As I was preparing to bring out the main course, I overheard Sarah laughing in the living room. Something made me pause in the kitchen doorway, just out of sight, but within earshot. What I heard next would forever change how I viewed my marriage and myself. Jessica, one of the senior associates, was asking Sarah about our relationship. When she works such long hours, does it cause problems? Sarah laughed dismissively. I heard ice clink in a glass before she responded. That is the beauty of having a practice husband. He is used to me being busy. I trained him well early on, she said, her words slightly slurred from wine. There was laughter, then a male voice I recognized as Anthony from tax law. Practice husband, that is cold, Sarah, even for you. I stood frozen, a serving dish, burning my palms as Sarah continued. Larry is a good guy, stable, supportive, but between us I always saw this as a starter marriage. She lowered her voice, but not enough. He helped me through law school, set me up nicely, but now that I am on partner track, I need someone who knows how to really make money, who fits with where I am headed. There were murmurs of agreement, then Jessica again. Does he know? Of course not. Men like Larry just want someone to love them. They are so easy to keep happy with basic attention. But I am not getting any younger, and Mark in mergers has been very attentive lately. Once I make junior partner next year, I will have enough financial security to make some changes. I nearly dropped the dish. Mark was a recently divorced partner who Sarah had mentioned frequently in recent months, always in the context of work or so, I thought. My mind raced back to late nights at the office weekend meetups for urgent casework, all the time she had been unavailable or distracted. Worst of all was the casual cruelty. The group began discussing me, as if I were a case study, debating the most strategic time for Sarah to divorce me, whether she should wait until after her next promotion, whether I would fight for alimony. They laughed about how oblivious I was, with Sarah boasting about how she had trained me to expect so little that I would probably thank her for the occasional weekend of attention. I retreated to the kitchen, set down the food, and took several deep breaths. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. 8 years of marriage reduced to a stepping stone in her career plan. 8 years of supporting her dreams while putting mine on hold, dismissed as a practice round for her real life. Somehow I made it through dinner. I served the food, poured more wine, and even managed to respond when directly addressed. Inside I was hollow. Every smile from Sarah now seemed calculated, every touch manipulative. I excused myself early, claiming a headache, and retreated to our guest bedroom where I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Around midnight, the front door closed behind the last guest. I heard Sarah cleaning up, humming to herself, apparently pleased with the evening. I steeled myself and went downstairs. What the hell is a practice husband? I asked without preamble. Sarah froze, wineglass in hand. Her expression cycled rapidly from confusion to recognition to careful neutrality. I do not know what you are talking about, Larry. Do not lie to me. I heard you tonight talking with your friends. Practice husband, starter marriage, waiting for the right time to leave me for Mark. You were eavesdropping. Her voice rose in indignation, as if I were the one who had done something wrong. And obviously you misheard. We were joking about reality TV shows. I stood my ground. You were discussing divorce strategies, Sarah. You called our marriage practice for your real life. You and your friends were laughing about how pathetic and clueless I am. She switched tactics, moving toward me with tears suddenly appearing. Baby, I had too much to drink. We were all saying stupid things. You know how people get at these work things, trying to sound tough and impressive. None of that was real. I backed away from her touch. 8 years, Sarah. 8 years I have supported you, believed in you, loved you. And you have been using me as a convenience until something better comes along. The argument lasted hours. Sarah alternated between denial, minimizing, and blaming alcohol. When none of that worked, she turned it back on me, accusing me of not being ambitious enough, of making her feel guilty for her success, of being insecure and paranoid. By 4 in the morning, she admitted what she had said, but insisted it was meaningless venting to friends who expected a certain attitude. I spent that night reviewing our entire relationship through this new lens. Every sacrifice I had made, every time I had prioritized her needs, every moment I thought we were building something together. Had it all been a calculated transaction? Was I really just a stepping stone she was using, until the path to her real life was secure? The next morning I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. While Sarah rushed off to an important client meeting as if nothing had happened, I began making calls. The first was to Daniel Stevens, reportedly the most ruthless divorce attorney in Seattle. His consultation fee was steep, but I needed to understand my options. In his sleek downtown office, I laid out my situation, how I had financially supported Sarah through law school, how we had built a life where my career consistently took a back seat to hers, how I now discovered she was planning to discard me once I was no longer useful. Daniel listened occasionally, taking notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his leather chair. First, stop thinking like a husband and start thinking like a soon-to-be single man protecting his interests. Today, secure copies of all financial records, bank statements, investment accounts, credit card bills, everything for the past 5 years. Second, start tracking expenses. Every penny you have contributed to the household and her career advancement. What shocked me most was discovering Sarah had already begun separating our finances. Over the past year, she had been transferring large sums from our joint account to a personal one I knew nothing about. The statements showed almost $90,000 moved. My contributions to our mortgage and household remained in the joint account just long enough to be spent. Daniel also advised me to gather evidence of my financial support during her education. Tuition payments, living expenses, even the hours I spent supporting her studies, rather than advancing my own career. In many states, professional degrees earned during marriage with spousal support can be considered in divorce settlements. The discovery that I might be entitled to a portion of her increased earning capacity was illuminating. I left his office with a clear action plan and something I had been missing for months, a sense of control over my own life. I was done being a practice husband. If Sarah wanted to treat our marriage as disposable, I would show her exactly what that looked like. My transformation began immediately. That weekend, I joined a gym and hired a personal trainer. Jason, my trainer, did not ask many questions about my sudden interest in fitness, just nodded when I said I needed to make changes. 3 times weekly, I channeled my hurt and betrayal into punishing workouts that left me exhausted but mentally clearer. I reached out to former colleagues about freelance opportunities. Within 2 weeks, I had secured a side project developing security protocols for a startup that would add significantly to my income. I opened a personal bank account and directed the payments there. When Sarah casually asked about my late nights at the computer, I was vague about personal projects, just as she had been about her time with colleagues. While Sarah was away at a 3-day conference in Chicago, I meticulously documented our household belongings, taking photos and creating spreadsheets of approximate values and purchase dates. I compiled digital copies of all our important documents. I consulted with a financial advisor about the tax implications of dividing our assets. The changes in my behavior did not go unnoticed. Sarah began asking questions about my new gym habit, my distracted demeanor, my sudden interest in our finances. The concerned wife act might have fooled me before, but now I saw it for what it was: fear of losing control of her carefully managed plan. 6 weeks after the dinner party, Sarah made her first attempt at reconciliation. She came home early with takeout from my favorite restaurant and suggested a movie night like we used to have. I participated minimally, watching her performance with detached interest. The woman who had mocked me to her friends was now trying to reconnect, not because she valued me, but because her timeline was being disrupted. When her gentle approach failed to elicit the eager response she expected, Sarah became more direct. One night she initiated intimacy for the first time in months. I politely declined, claiming fatigue from my workout. The shock on her face was almost comical. In 8 years I had never rejected her advances. "Sarah, is everything okay with us?" she asked the next morning, voice carefully modulated to show concern. "You seem distant lately. Is there something we need to talk about?" The irony was not lost on me. Now that I was withdrawing the unconditional support she had taken for granted, she noticed something was wrong. I assured her everything was fine. I was just focused on some personal goals. The same excuse she had given me countless times. By month 3 of my practice divorce plan, I had secured a small apartment across town, paid the first and last month's rent, and gradually moved essential personal items there during my lunch breaks. I had built my freelance business to the point it could sustain me if needed. I had lost 20 pounds, replaced my outdated wardrobe, and reconnected with friends Sarah had deemed not impressive enough for our social circle. The most challenging part was maintaining the facade at home while I prepared. I played the role of slightly distracted but functioning husband, neither hostile nor affectionate. I attended the occasional work event with Sarah, noting how she now tried to include me in conversations, how she suddenly wanted to showcase our marriage to the very people she had mocked it to before. Behind the scenes, I finalized my divorce strategy with Daniel. We prepared fair but firm settlement documents that would protect my interests without being vindictive. I was not looking to punish Sarah, just to ensure I was not discarded without consideration for my contributions to our life together. On a Friday evening in December, exactly 4 months after the dinner party, I implemented the final phase of my plan. I prepared Sarah's favorite meal, bought a bottle of the expensive Cabernet she preferred, and set the dining room table with our best dishes. When she came home, surprise registered on her face. "What is the occasion?" she asked, clearly pleased by the effort but suspicious of my motives. "I think we need to talk," I said, pulling out her chair. And I wanted to do it right. The dinner conversation remained light, as we ate, discussing neutral topics like the unseasonably cold weather and an upcoming movie release. Sarah seemed to relax, clearly believing this was an attempt to rekindle our connection. When I brought out dessert, her favorite tiramisu from the Italian bakery across town, she reached for my hand across the table. "Larry, this is wonderful. I know things have been strange between us lately. I am so glad we are finding our way back." I looked at her perfectly manicured fingers resting on mine, remembering how we used to stay up talking about our dreams, how I had once believed we were building something real together. Then I gently withdrew my hand and reached into my jacket pocket. "I would like you to have these," I said, placing a manila envelope beside her plate. "Consider it a practice divorce." Her face contorted in confusion as she opened the envelope and scanned the first page of divorce papers. "What is this? Some kind of joke?" "Not a joke, Sarah. Just the logical next step after a practice marriage." I kept my voice calm, controlled. "You wanted to use me as a stepping stone until something better came along. I am simply accelerating your timeline." She flipped through the documents, her lawyer mind quickly assessing the situation. "This cannot be serious. We need to talk about this. We have had 4 months to talk about it. 4 months since I heard you tell your friends I was temporary, since I discovered you were planning to leave, once I had served my purpose. I have been waiting for you to be honest with me, to respect me enough to tell me the truth." Sarah switched tactics, tears forming. "Whatever you heard that night, it was not what I really feel. I love you. We have built a life together. I said those things because you wanted to impress your friends. Because you thought I would never find out I interrupted. Or because that is what you truly believe. that I am just a practice round for the real thing. I laid out the evidence of her deception, the secret bank account, the lies about working late when she was with Mark, the gradual emotional withdrawal as she prepared her exit strategy. With each revelation, her denials grew weaker. "This is not what I wanted," she finally whispered. "What did you want, Sarah? To keep me in the dark until it was convenient for you to leave, to use me for stability, while you pursued someone you deemed more worthy. You cannot just end 8 years. Like this," she said, anger finally breaking through. "We need counseling. We need to work through this." I shook my head. "The papers include a fair division of assets. I am not contesting the house if you want to keep it. I have already moved most of my personal items to my new place. There is nothing left to discuss. You have been planning this all these months." The hurt in her voice would have moved me once. Now I recognized it as the same manipulation she had always used when things did not go her way. "I learned from the best, Sarah. You taught me that marriages can be strategic, that people can be used and discarded when they no longer serve your purpose. I simply decided I deserve better than being someone's practice husband." She tried several more angles. She accused me of overreacting to a drunken conversation. She suggested I was having a midlife crisis. She even attempted to use our history, reminiscing about college days and the dreams we once shared. When nothing worked, she finally asked the question I had been waiting for. "Is there someone else?" I almost laughed at the predictability. "No, Sarah. Unlike you, I did not line up a replacement before ending our marriage. This is about self-respect, not trading up for a better model." As the reality set in, Sarah made her final play. She admitted to the comments at the party but insisted they were meaningless posturing. She confessed to occasional flirtation with Mark but swore nothing physical had happened. She promised therapy changes a fresh start. She even suggested we renew our vows. I listened without interruption, then stood to clear the dishes. 3 months ago, I might have believed you," I said quietly. "I might have been so grateful for another chance that I would have ignored all evidence to the contrary. But that version of me is gone." Later that night, I took my packed suitcase and walked out the door of the home we had shared. Sarah stood in the entryway, mascara streaked down her cheeks, still holding the divorce papers. The final image I have of my practice wife. The months that followed brought expected challenges. Mutual friends chose sides. Finances were untangled. Memories and possessions were sorted into mine and hers. Sarah made several attempts at reconciliation, each more desperate than the last. When she realized I was truly gone, anger replaced pleading. Her lawyer countered our initial settlement offer with more aggressive terms. I remained calm and firm, allowing Daniel to handle the legal aspects while I focused on rebuilding. My new apartment became a sanctuary of peace. I rediscovered old hobbies like photography and hiking that had fallen away during my marriage. I expanded my freelance work into a small consulting business. I reconnected with family members who had sensed something off about my marriage, but respected my choices. A year later, our divorce was finalized. I felt neither triumph nor regret, just a quiet certainty that I had done what was necessary. Sarah eventually transferred to her firm Boston office, perhaps finding the Seattle memories too difficult. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she and Mark had briefly dated before a messy breakup. 2 years after leaving my practice marriage, I met Alexis, an elementary school art teacher, with an infectious laugh and genuine warmth that drew me in despite my caution. We took things slowly, building a foundation of honest communication and mutual respect before making any commitments. When I eventually shared my divorce story, she held my hand and thanked me for trusting her with it. What I learned from my practice marriage was invaluable. I learned that love without respect is merely convenience. That partnerships require both parties to nurture each other's growth, not just one supporting the other ambitions. Most importantly, I learned that walking away from something broken takes more strength than staying to fix what cannot be repaired. Today, I am no longer anyone's practice husband. I am a whole person who understands his worth, who knows that real love does not calculate advantages or plan exit strategies. Sometimes we need to lose what was never truly ours to find what genuinely belongs in our lives. What about you? Have you ever discovered someone was not who they pretended to be? Share your story in the comments below.